Hey everyone, it's been a little while since I've done a story time in which I've broken down a piece that I've published, but after writing up and reporting and publishing a story on Kotaku this morning about Batman Arkham Knight, specifically looking into the PC version of the game, it shipped in really a broken state in which performance was terrible. You needed a really high-end machine to get a decent frame rate, despite the fact that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt just came out, another high-performance, high-end game that ran at 60 frames a second on my machine, and I don't expect every game to run at 60 frames a second, but I don't expect that when in the Batmobile, the game is going to run at 14 frames a second, and that's my experience, and it was an experience a lot of people have had. So the question that was in our mind at Kotaku, and in my mind chiefly, was, what went wrong? Like, how does a game ship like this? And can we try and explain that so that our readers and the video game public at large gets a better understanding and hopefully in some way also holds Warner Brothers and the partners involved accountable in some way so that maybe this doesn't happen in the future as much. And one of the things that's come up a lot as people have been discussing this story is, what do you think about Steam refunds? And I honestly, I can't tell you specifically how Steam refunds played into this, but my gut tells me that Steam refunds certainly played a role. It has long been my belief that the advantages of digital games, the advantages of ditching physical media have not necessarily, while there are tons of advantages there, I think we have lost something in that process. And what we specifically lost is the rights that we have to media. Now, when you buy something digitally, you're just getting a license. You don't have the ability to resell that game. You don't have the ability to share that game. You can't trade it. We lose a lot in there, and I don't necessarily know if it's been an equal sort of benefit for the things that we've lost in the process. And, for whatever resulted in Valve deciding that Steam needed refunds, I think we're going to look back at the ability to get a refund on a game as being a monumental bonus and watershed moment in digital rights for consumers, at least in the video game industry. And it's going to force other retailers to think about that. Green Man Gaming was a company that did not traditionally offer refunds, and suddenly with Batman, and because people could get refunds on Steam, they had to reconsider that, and as far as I know, I believe some refunds are actually getting processed right now for folks who bought the game there. And so it's a recourse. It's a way for people that goes beyond petitions. It's a way for people that goes beyond complaining on Twitter. It allows them to say to Warner Brothers and everyone involved, we're not happy with what you produced. This is not what I paid for. You shouldn't have shipped this at $60, and here's a way of me actually actively taking a stance by saying, I'm not going to play this product, and I'm going to give you my money back because I don't think that you held up your side of the bargain. And so while I cannot speak to Warner Brothers' feelings on this matter because my sources were not necessarily within the Warner Brothers hierarchy, and that Warner Brothers refused to talk to me exactly about what happened, I have to imagine that the Steam refunds played a role in that. And even if it didn't, it's still symbolically important that Steam refunds exist. As for the story itself, kind of give people some insight in how this stuff works. I've been looking into this for the better part of a week, and it's slow going to get a story like this in place because even once you have information, just having one set of information doesn't allow you to necessarily run that. You can. There have been stories in the past that I've run single source in which I felt like they're so ironclad, I so trust the source that I'm willing to go the next step, even though traditionally you want to vet that with other people. So, in this case, it was a story where I had one source telling me one thing, and then I found another source that was able to look at that and go, yeah, no, yeah. And I was able to paint a picture, at least I think in the story, that tries to show you what went into Arkham Knight as a PC game, what didn't go into Arkham Knight as a PC game. And between those two sources, I believe I felt confident enough that I am always incredibly nervous before publishing stories like this because you always think, well, this is the one that's going to show that I'm a fraud. This is the one where there's one small piece that I forgot about or didn't look at, and it unravels the whole thing, or at least paints the story in a light that maybe I can't take the rest seriously. So far, knock on wood, that hasn't happened with this story because it's always my intention to not mislead people. It's always my intention to try and get at some form of truth in the video game industry, knowing that so much in video games is obfuscated, so much is hidden from us, and we're not talking about war. We're not talking about people dying. We are talking about video games, but that doesn't mean there isn't importance in transparency. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't know more about how the games are made, why they are published in the way they are, and to hold people accountable for that. That is my job. That is, partially the consumer's job. But in my position where I'm connected, can talk to people to hopefully get me answers. There are lots of times where I look into things and I discover information that I wish I could share, but I don't or I can't. And then this is a time where I found information that I wanted to share, and I worked really, really hard to find additional information, sourcing, corroboration, sources that wanted to speak this story. The people that I talked to, the way they discussed this was, this is important. This is something that people need to know about. And so I was able to get enough of that together and feel comfortable with it. And sort of the process that happens at Kotaku, and this happened at Giant Bomb and other places that I worked at, is that I present what I've got. I sort of present my argument, how I feel about the sources, and then we talk about it. We try and poke holes in it. We try and figure out what exactly are you missing. How could other people look at this and go, this is BS? And then at some point, we hopefully get to a point where we can publish it. And oftentimes, the stories don't get to that point. One of the things that people have said is, you should do a story like this for Halo the Master Chief Edition. And I'm okay with saying that I tried. I looked into that story. I had some information, but we didn't feel confident enough about it to write a piece. We didn't feel like we had enough that we could say a whole lot with confidence. And so that story didn't happen. Doesn't mean I won't one day write about the Master Chief Collection, but I absolutely went down that road. That game was ground zero for discussing these issues in terms of the industry shipping half-finished games, broken games, however you want to characterize it. And I did. I tried to look into that. It just didn't pan out. And that's the thing. You have to kill your darlings sometimes when you work on these stories, where you've got some information or a little piece that's like, man, it'd be great to share this. I think people will find this interesting, but I can't do that isolated. Or at least if I'm going to do that, it's got to be very selective and very careful. And so that's the thing that happens sometimes, is there are far more stories we wish we could publish than stories we actually do publish. But I hope that goes to show that at all the places I've worked, whether Kotaku, Giant Bomb, or places before that, take incredible care to make sure that you're not done a disservice. Because the moment we publish a story that people don't like or can poke holes in, or there's reasons to think it's false, it takes a million stories for people to believe in something after one story that kind of shows us stumbling. And so that's something we try and take into account all the time. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get it or that we are going to get it right 100% of the time, but I think we take great care to make sure that that happens. I take great care to make sure that happens, because my reputation is everything. When I publish these stories, I'm putting my name on the line. Oftentimes, the anonymous sources are not putting their name on the line. They are in some sense, because by speaking up at all, you are opening the door to someone tracking down who you are. Maybe a certain stray quote, kind of tips them off to something that, that person might have said that. That happens every time a story writes. But my byline goes there. My name goes there. And so I hope that this video helps convey the gravity that I think about that my byline does mean everything. And when I write something like that, the Worth Reading, that had a misleading headline about ukulele, that hurts my credibility. Now, that was just a stray headline that I regret, and there wasn't a whole lot of reporting involved, but all of that feeds into the general picture of who I am, what my values are, and what I don't and don't take seriously. So if you have questions about the story, if there's anything I can clarify, if there's any questions people have, please leave that in the comments on YouTube. If you're listening to this in audio form, you can always reach out to me on Twitter at Patrick Klubik. But thanks so much for your support. Hopefully you enjoyed the story and got something out of it. I hope to have more to write in the future and soon. And hey, if you're out there listening to this, reading this, and you have a story to share, know that you can reach out to me at patrick.klubik@kotaku.com. I take my sources very, very seriously. And even if you just want to share something that's not for publication, I'd be happy to hear it. Talk to you guys soon.